Okay, let's call to order the city council meeting for September 24th. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Armstrong.
Here.
Councilmember Rubio is absent this evening. Councilmember Veros.
Here.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Here.
Mayor Hudson.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 3 announcements, 3.1 changes and additions to the agenda we have done this evening. Item 3.2, if you'd like to speak under public comment, please fill out a speaker card located in the back of the room. Item 4, public comment.
Okay, public comment is open. Now is the time for anyone in the audience to address us on items that are not on the agenda, or if you want to pull, is there any cards to pull an item from the consent calendar?
No, but I do have speaker cards for this item.
Okay. Let's get into them then.
Item 4, or the first one is Greg Carr.
Great.
Good evening, Greg Carr, San Juan resident. I'm just standing tonight here to talk to the audience, because you guys already have your feelings and your minds made up on the Measure N, and to talk through the mayor to those of you who are on the screen watching this. When you go to vote, think about what a yes vote means. Look closely at the flyers that they send out and ask yourself, are you getting platitudes, or are you getting numbers, or are you getting facts? Investigate what those numbers and facts are, and then make an educated decision on what to do. I propose to you that we should vote no on it and have the city look into its pockets and its organization a little bit deeper. And all those things that affect people, it does, because when you run out of money, the average company can't go to the well. If it does, it has to pay interest. But of course, the city can go to the voters and ask them to pay more taxes. So give it some thought. I urge you to vote no on Measure N. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Next speaker, please.
Gary Alpert.
All right.
Hello there, Mayor, City Council, staff, and community members. My name is Gary Alpert. Tonight I'm speaking here as the board president of the San Ramon Valley Education Foundation. And I'm here to remind you and the public that the 41st annual Run for Education is in just a few short weeks. The run will be Sunday, October 13th from 8 a.m. to 12 noon at 2700 Camino Ramon across from City Center. The Run for Education has evolved from the Primos de Primos to become the largest run that supports education in Northern California. The event attracts thousands of participants of all ages while raising needed funds for our San Ramon schools. The Run for Ed is the primary fundraising activity for the San Ramon Valley Education Foundation. We're a nonprofit that supports education in our community in partnership with the district. It is the only event in the San Ramon Valley that includes participants, volunteers, spectators from all 35 of our schools, representing the communities of Alamo, Danville, and San Ramon. We have a 5K walk, a 10K run, a mini run for 2 to 6-year-olds, friendship run for people with special needs, and a large expo. The 5K mini run and friendship run are all in and around BR 2700. The 10K will start at Charlotte Wood, head down the Iron Horse Trail, ending at the same starting place as the 5K at BR 2700. And before I leave tonight, I really want to acknowledge the tremendous support from the city of San Ramon. As you all know, partially closing Camino Ramon, Bishop Drive, Norris Canyon Executive Parkway, and allowing runners to cross Crow Canyon at the Iron Horse Trail is not something you do very easily. And it takes an awful lot of work, a lot of planning, and a lot of thought. So we've been working closely with Public Works, the San Ramon Police, and the Parks and Community Services Department for months to ensure a safe and a fun event. So thank you, City of San Ramon. And you all are welcome to join us. We hope to see you. And more information is always available at our webpage, srvef.org. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary. Next speaker, please.
Dinesh Govindarao.
Next.
All right. Hi, Mayor Hudson, Vice Mayor Perkins, and council members, staff, and members of the public. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to all of you this evening. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for sitting on the dais there and the staff for your time and efforts to continue to serve the public and strive to make our city one of the best places to live, work, and play. What I'd like to discuss today is the over $17 million budget shortfall our city is facing. I'd like to share some comments where I feel it's important for the council, the staff, and the public to hear. And I'm not here to give the pros or cons of Measure N. But I would like to read to you a short excerpt from the East Bay Times dated back in October 23rd, 2022. And I'd be happy to email Christina this article if anyone needs it. San Ramon has maintained city services during the pandemic without laying off regular workers. Only temporary employees who are now back at work were affected by job reductions. But to do that, the city made its annual pension installment payment with $3.2 million of savings that were supposed to be used to pay down the debt. The road ahead looks even bumpier. Federal pandemic aid will run out, and the revenues are forecast to not keep up with expenses over the next 5 years. City Manager Joe Gorton told the City Council that the shortfall would total $44 million in the current and next 4 fiscal years. Separately buried in the budget for the current fiscal year, he wrote, "If left unchecked, this trend would result in overspending the general reserves and is unsustainable." Again, this was back in 2022, and I'm sure many of you remember this back then, and I hope you saw this article. Hope anyone who reads this would have had alarms going off saying this is dire and we really need to do a deep dive to analyze this. I think this article was quite insightful and prescient, and more emphasis should have been placed on these concerns that were raised back then. We hear people talking on this campaign trail about fiscal responsibility, but this can't be a nice marketing scheme anymore or lip service. Our city faces many budget challenges. So my ask as a resident is that we need to make sure we are rolling up our sleeves, be proactive and not reactive so we can avoid these issues in the future. Going forward, we can't use one-time funds to help us with these ongoing programs. If the 1% tax passes, we potentially generate $16 million more in revenue, as you all know. However, the shortfalls are going to continue if that article is correct. Now, it's important we maintain public safety and the great quality of life for our San Ramon residents, but we need to examine how we do better with expense management and raising revenues. We're going to need to make tough decisions and need to be willing to make these tough decisions that may not be popular to everyone. I think it's important to look at best practices from other cities when it comes to new technology, maintenance, capital improvement programs, public safety, staffing, and obtaining federal and state grants, to list a few, so we can operate more efficiently as a city and move towards a budget surplus and not a shortfall. Again, I want to thank you for your service and appreciate your time today. And I'd love to stay longer, but I have a flight to catch early morning tomorrow. So thank you.
Thank you. Good timing. Next speaker, please.
That was the last speaker card for this item.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak that didn't put in a card? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And I just can't let this go without saying something. Denton, the thing about that race, and when it hits Crocan, I was there that year. We shut down Crocan. People are used to it now because we had Crocan shutdowns. That is not going to be fun. Send the fire department. Okay, next item, please.
We take public comment for consent. Correct. We take that under item 4. We have to speak under this item. We do have one more speaker card for public comment.
Okay,
Shirag Kathrani. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, thank you for addressing the last issue that I mentioned, is like what will happen if the Measure N fails. And I think city has updated the website and added what will happen. I was looking at these cameras, those are on the agenda 5.4, and I saw the quick pricing of the camera. It seems like, is there a city had allocated like 5 cameras from the budget, and there are only 4 being made? And what was the price increase, and why was the price? Because cameras didn't go up that expensive. That what was the price increase, if somebody
this is
could be
public
there?
comment now, though. You're talking about another item, so.
Yeah, another item. That's what I said. I did.
He's
Total.
speaking under consent item 5.4, which is addressed under public comment.
Okay,
Yeah. So was it necessary that what was the big price change that happened that it became from 164 cameras, 5 cameras to 4 cameras?
okay. We'll get you an answer for that.
Sure.
after-
Okay.
We'll go ahead and finish up the rest of your public comment.
No, I think that's the main question I had, and it wasn't addressed in the whole.
Okay.
Through the mayor, then
Yes.
the council now has the option of pulling the item in light of what you've heard from the testimony, or just going ahead with the vote on the consent calendar. That's completely up to the
Okay.
council.
I'd rather just go ahead with the consent calendar. What do the rest of you want to do?
Probably that. Just
And
ask
get
staff-
an
ask
answer
staff
if
to
you can, yeah.
Respond.
Yeah. Individually, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but this is public comment now, so we'll close public comment for good this time. They'll get you an answer.
Sure. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 5, consent calendar.
Okay, consent calendar items are generally routine in nature and acted upon with a single action. Unless somebody wanted to pull an item. No, anyone wish to pull an item?
Nope, we got a motion in a second.
Okay. And get on the ball, Dave, and vote.
Your vote didn't take there.
It looks like 4-0 to me. Rubio absent. Okay, next item, please.
Item 6, 7, and 8, we have no business this evening. Item 9, new business. 9.1, behavioral health response program update, presentation from the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District.
Mayor, council members, thank you for having us here today. I was looking for my compadre, Chief Carlson. He was going to be up here with me, but I will. I really actually don't need him.
Oh.
I'm kidding. I'm joking. No, in all seriousness, we're fine. Because he'll be back for questions, but I don't blame you. I would too. But in all seriousness, we're happy to be here to present an update for something we've talked a lot with the council about and our fire board and the partnership with Denton Carlson, his police department, which is by far the best in the valley, and we've had a great relationship. So we're excited to kind of update you, show you some numbers. For those in the audience watching, this is the program that now is almost 1 year in practice, which gives you kind of a look as to how things are working. So we're excited to share that information with you. The other thing I'd say is we want to get a lot of questions from the council. If something comes up, you guys feel free to ask. And then the other part of this that I think is important is we attended both a dispatch conference called Navigator, which is a world conference for communication centers. And we were asked to do a presentation similar to what you're going to get, but more detailed because they didn't know who we were. And then we just got done at what's known as EMS World, Emergency Medical Services World Conference in Las Vegas. That was, a rough sledding to go to Vegas and have to do a presentation there.
What month?
What's that?
What month were you there?
We were there last week.
Oh, there you go. Good timing.
Yeah, week and a half. And it was well received. And I'm just really proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish with the San Ramon Police Department, the partnership. And more importantly, I think what you'll hear is a diversion program that's dealing with how we deal with mental health in our community in a way that nobody else is in the nation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. I don't know if Chief Carlson has anything. I was taking the lead because you stepped out, but anything to add?
Juggling things all over the place. I just wanted to add, I think it's what has come out of this more than just the ability to serve the community in the best possible way. But when you talk about first responders and joint responses to whatever call that's needed, I think one of the greatest aspects of this, in addition to serving the community the best we can, is the relationships that are being built within the fire department, the police department. We joke all the time about, well, it's them and us and all these different things. But through the training that we've had, through the joint response calls that we had and working together, really the camaraderie between our organizations has just gone through the roof. And I think that benefits the public in so many different ways because we're working harmoniously together. And I know it's shocking for you, Mayor Hudson, to see police and fire working well together. Despite what I say behind closed doors, I actually like Chief Meyer. We get along well, but I think what it is we've had some interesting comments from law enforcement organizations throughout the state about why are you doing this? And some of the comments and questions that I get is, well, what went wrong that forced you to do this? And my answer is nothing. We just figured out a better way to do it. And that credit goes to the fire department for developing the plan and coming to us and saying, hey, we can do this in a way that's going to serve the community better. So huge kudos to them for bringing this several years ago. And it's exciting to see where it's come today. So with that, we'll turn it over to the people who actually run the program, Jonas and Lance.
I'd like to think the fact that you guys are now in the same building actually contributes to some of the working
Oh,
relationships.
we play ping pong regularly. It's amazing. They're really coming along. They're turning into firefighters. Anyway, I'm remiss. Paige Meyer, fire.
Getting a gun.
Yeah, I know. I tried to get one. They won't give one to me. Paige Meyer, Fire Chief. I should have mentioned that for those watching. I'd like to introduce your representative here, Chief Jonas Aguiar, Deputy Chief. Also, our EMS Manager, Lance Maples, will be speaking. And in the crowd, we have Preston Looper, who's one of our mental health professionals, who's been helping develop this program. So with that, Chief Aguiar.
Good evening, everyone. How are you doing tonight?
Good.
Good. Well, as Chief Meyer said, I'm excited to be here to be able to present in our hometown, in our city of San Ramon. We've been to the East Coast, we've been to Vegas, we've talked to DC about these programs, and you always have to kind of do more explanations about why it is that we're here and what it is that we're talking about. But I know all of you sitting here and those watching know why we're here and why we developed this program, because of the impacts that we've seen from behavioral health emergencies in our community and the impacts it has had on our ability as public servants to respond to different types of emergencies and the impacts it's had on our EMS system and our hospital system within the county. So there's a lot of reasons as to why we did this, but it's exciting to come here and actually present them to the city that we're able to operate this program in. Recognizing the need for change, and I just talked about it a little bit, but there's a lot of things that have gone on over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years that have caused a behavioral health crisis within this country and specifically within our local area to balloon up. It's gotten to a point where it's unsustainable for us to continue to do business as we've been doing it. And as you can see with a lot of the statistics that we have up here, a lot of the responses that are behavioral health emergencies that we take to psychiatric emergency services in Martinez are calls or patients that get transported there that then end up being released in less than 24 hours the majority of the time. And that to us is a big issue when our psychiatric emergency services is overburdened. There's not enough capacity there to deal with the behavioral health crisis within the county itself. So we have an issue where we're continually taking patients there who maybe don't need to go there. You know, if it comes down to it and we look at the training that our police and fire have, is there a better way where we can step in? And so through our evaluation of statistics like we've looked at, we had a huge problem with minors being transported and going to PES. These are juveniles, these are kids who maybe they had a bad day at school, maybe they broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, they say the wrong words, and then 911 gets called and PD doesn't have they don't have a better option. They have to do what they have to do, and we have to then transport these patients to psychiatric emergency service. So there was a huge problem for us when we started to dive into the statistics and really looked at the human factor of it for us. And nothing better than an actual example, but approximately 4 years ago, we had a 15-year-old male. This isn't an uncommon call. 15-year-old child, a boy who's acting irrational for his father. No drugs, no alcohol, no suicidal ideations, but the father, not knowing what to do, he's got an irrational 15-year-old child, calls 911. And we show up and we do and use the only tool that we have at that point in time, which is an involuntary hold to PES, right? I think we can all agree that maybe that wasn't the best solution at that point in time, but because there were no better options, we had to do what we had to do at that point in time to try to get this patient to where we thought they needed to go. As you'll see through this program and what Lance Maples will talk about when he comes up here is the process we use to come up with a better solution. And we're going to get into a little bit of that now. Part of that better solution and really what we use to help guide our decision-making process were these 4 principles. And these really were things that we felt were must-haves that we needed to make sure were part of the solution that we came up with. The first one was establishing an appropriate response for the program. Now, when you call 911 here and you have a behavioral health emergency from the fire department, you get an engine and ambulance. That's 5 people. And you either get 1 or 2 police officers from PD, 7 total people. showing up to your house because you're having a mental health crisis. And I don't know about you all, but to me, that doesn't speak de-escalation. That speaks escalation, right? That's not what we want to do. We don't want to show up in force and cause these patients more problems than what they originally had. So we had to determine what that appropriate response was going to be. And we had to make sure that for the right type of call, for the right type of behavioral health emergency, that our personnel, we were sending the appropriate amount of people there. And if that's just a couple of paramedics to de-escalate, talk to the patient, then that's what it needs to be, and everybody else can stage outside. But we had to make sure that that was part of this program. The next one is we had to improve the patient experience. And I think the biggest thing that we talk about this one is we had to redefine what we term these folks as. They were patients. They are patients. All right. These aren't police matters. So why is police showing up first on scene for these types of incidents? You know, as far as I know, police has some minimal training, but they're not the subject matter experts when it comes to these types of things. And our paramedics are more suited for that. So we had to redefine what a patient was, and we're able to successfully do that in the program. The next thing we had to do was improve that patient outcome. And by doing that meant that we had to understand, as an organization, police and fire, what are the different options that are available out there for these types of patients? We had one tool before: involuntary hold, transport to psychiatric emergency services. Through this process, we're able to come up with a lot of different options, whether it's them and finding out who the regular clinician was and helping them secure appointments through the regular clinician, 988 or the crisis center in Walnut Creek, and getting them local resources. If there's other outpatient resources, creating a safety plan for them and their family. There's a lot of different options that we weren't informed of and that we weren't using prior to this program. And the last one was improving that provider experience. This was a big one for us because a lot of the changes that were brought forth and a lot of the drive behind this project was from our providers, from our dispatchers, from our police officers, from our firefighters who are out there responding to these calls, knowing that there's got to be a better way to do this, and we're not doing it. And it was having a negative impact on them as well. A lot of them have families, a lot of them have children of their own, and they're transporting these kids who they don't necessarily think always need to go to that one location. So they were bringing it forward to our command staff and really driving this up the chain, which was a great thing. And our work group that we put together, we had our police officers, firefighters, dispatchers, we had labor representatives, and we had folks from throughout the county that helped really facilitate a lot of this for us. We'll talk a little bit about some of the program benefits. And as you can see, there are a lot of them as it directly relates to the patient, to the community, as well as to the district itself. We were able to provide the appropriate care, more timely care. We could avoid escalation. For the community itself, we were able to reduce unnecessary patient transports and psychiatric holds, which is a huge one for us, not taking patients to PES who don't need to go to psychiatric emergency services, and really reducing that impact on the strained system. And also, another large one, and we'll talk a little bit more about it towards the end of the presentation, is preserving fire, EMS, and police capacity inside the city. If we're able to reduce the amount of these patients that we transport to Martinez, who I'm sure all of us have gone down 680 during rush hour traffic, that's an hour and some change to get there and back, if not longer, not to mention the offload time once we get there. If we can keep those patients locally or go to a local hospital or provide them with some alternative form of treatment, then it preserves our resources here for fires, more urgent calls, et cetera. But another great example of this and the program benefit and the human factor of it is recently, just this year, once this program went into effect, we had an 11-year-old child at a local school. 11-year-old child had his head down on his desk, hitting his head on the desk, starting to experience a behavioral health crisis in the classroom. Teacher pulls the child out, they go to the nurse, they bring in the school resource officer, the police officer. They're informed and educated about the program. They bring in fire, they contact the parents, they get everybody together, they create a plan. The parents actually divulge patient was recently diagnosed with autism. The patient's on new types of medication. They add context to the call that allows everybody to come together and create a better solution, which is the parent taking the patient to the primary care and their clinician to get the treatment that they need, not taking them to psychiatric emergency service on an involuntary hold, which 4 years ago would have been the way in which we've done that. So next, I'd like to turn it over to Lance Maples, who's our EMS manager, and he'll go more in depth into how we got it.
I wanted to say something before it gets started. Another person that deserves a lot of credit for getting the ball rolling on this that nobody knows about it was Lowella Haskew, councilwoman from Walnut Creek, because of an incident they had there that ended up in the death of a young man. But She's the one that brought it to the mayor's conference, and all the cities got involved at that point. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mayor, members of the council, first and foremost, you might have just noticed I leaned over to the fire chief and said, is this the exact same council that was here a year and a half ago when we did our original presentation? And, you know, he nodded, yes, it was. And so I remember that night and was a little anxious. But I remember how it was received when the presentation was given to the council, and ultimately the nod that the council gave to pursue this and go down that road. I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you at this point, because when the governing agency for the city where we're providing service gives us a nod, it gives us a level of confidence that we have you behind us the whole way. So I'd start off with thank you on that. You just heard from both the chiefs and Chief Aguiar kind of the reasons why. I'm going to drill down a little bit and just give you some examples of what we did in all three phases to get to where we are today. Phase one, ultimately design, develop, we did organizational mapping. We had to really dig in, figure out what we were currently doing, why we were doing it, and what are the options that are out there. This caused the organization to pull together a stakeholder group, which was made up of police officers, firefighter, paramedics, dispatchers, people with clinical experience, and also, most importantly, people with lived experience. Over a 2-year period, we've had 100 meetings with this group, both in person and virtual, to really talk about every step of the way. No stone was not turned over during this. We talked with every level of behavioral health throughout the county, and we put together a map of where we were, where we needed to be. One of the main things we learned during this process is data collection for behavioral health response was really intermittent throughout the county, and not just the county, throughout the nation. And we had to do a better job of that. So the first thing we did is in collaboration with the police department and their data folks in the fire district is we put together a real-time dashboard that collects everything police and fire do when it comes to behavioral health responses. This dashboard can tell you location, time of day, day of week, demographic, everything, and patient outcomes. And so as we assess what the community needs are, we now have this data collection that's real time on a dashboard that we can look at any time, and we can tell you Thursdays, 11-year-old adolescent students have a higher probability of having a behavioral health response. These are things that we loosely knew in the past, but now we can hopefully, moving forward, staff resources that are on demand for these type of items.
Is this coming through the dispatch and its data is it collected there through dispatch and then the firefighter EMS?
Yeah, this is
officers?
collected at 3 data points right now. When police are involved, that's a data point. What the initial call is at the dispatch center, and then what the patient interaction is with fire, and then the outcome and the turnover. It's really 4 data points. And I'll get to what the 4th one is in phase 2, just so you know. I just don't want to forget it. But after we did organizational mapping, data collection, what we realized is our staff at all levels, dispatch, law enforcement, and firefighter paramedics, had very limited mental health response training. Maybe a half hour in the police academy, 40 minutes in a paramedic class, things like that. But we realized, you know, if we're going to deal with this differently, we have to get we got to give them the right tools. Really, the tools we had given them in the past was hit everything, one size fits all. Everything, if there's a problem or the magic word spoke, then it's an involuntary hold. So that's when the group recommended that we find a behavioral health expert, Preston Looper, and he came in and put together behavioral health curriculum for police, fire, and dispatch. The curriculum was set up in 3 4-hour modules, so it's 12 hours of training.
Wow.
The key point to the training, I can't express this enough. I kind of go over the top on this. Chief Carlson alluded to this. It put the dispatchers, the police officers, firefighters, the men and women all in the same classroom to compare and contrast their experiences in the field. And when give examples of when calls didn't go right and when they did go right. The relationship that started 2 years ago when this training went on with San Ramon Police Department and the fire district is outstanding, and it just continues to grow. The police officers are comfortable enough to move it up the food chain. We had a firefighter first and went well. We had this one, we thought it could go different. And fire captains and paramedics also are more than willing to exchange the successes. So after we completed the training, we still were convening the work group, and we determined that, you know, one size fits all, once again, won't work. And a lot of people call 911, you know, as a first resort and a last resort. But specifically when it comes to behavioral health, there's some people that call that don't need a response. They just need some type of immediate service that they can receive over the phone. I'm sure all of you are aware of the current 988 system that's been rolled out nationwide. We mirrored a lot of what we were trying to do off 988, but we knew that 988 wasn't fully prepared to take on what they were advertising. So we put together policies, protocols. We went through a legal review of our program, which was very time consuming, as you can imagine, but we didn't want to put employees or the government agencies at any added risk. We got sign-offs on everything, and we developed what we refer to now as the warm handoff. And what that is when a person in crisis calls the 911 center here in San Ramon, if they're in a situation where they're not a threat to self or other and don't have a medical condition, but are having some type of behavioral health experience, we transfer them to the Contra Costa Crisis Center. That's our fourth point of data collection. And this is a direct dial line that is truly a warm handoff. Dispatch stays on the call, make sure the transition is made. If the transition is smooth and the counselor can get the person the needs that they have, then there's just a call afterwards from the clinician that tells the dispatch center what the closeout was. So it's a complete closed loop, so no one gets lost in that initial system. Also, it's set up as after the clinician speaks with them, if they think a response is needed, the caller gets transferred right back to the same dispatcher, and then they're set up in a position where either police or fire will come out. This by far is the first of its kind. When we started this over a year ago, we knew we were out of the box and we were trying to get the patients the right level of service that they needed. So one of the key points on the slide is, and this is something we continue to do and will continue to do, every behavioral health call that comes into the dispatch center is reviewed. The recording is listened to. We make sure the protocols are followed. We look at the PCR to make sure the outcome of what happened followed what we wanted to happen through the call. And that's something we're committed to doing because 100% quality improvement on these is absolutely necessary. It's a brand new program. We need to do this, and we will continue to do this.
Lance, well, you may cover it in phase 3 here, but I think you're talking about the dispatchers and this warm handoff and everything else. If the service call goes out and they're on site at somebody's residence or at school or wherever, are the responders also trained to get a clinician on the phone and do that warm handoff thing if necessary, if that's maybe the best solution?
We probably should have had you on the steering committee. You're head of it. I like that. I like that. Phase 3, firefighter first. So this is the phase. I mean, we knew we accomplished something with the warm handoff, and bottom line, about 6% of our behavioral health calls are now handled that way. But we knew there was more to do. The steering committee knew there was more to do. So we developed the firefighter first response. And in a nutshell, that is when a caller in behavioral health crisis calls the 911 center and states they're in crisis, but they're not a threat to self or other, but there is a condition, either a medical condition or something that has taken place where a call to the crisis center is not going to work. So what we do on these calls is we dispatch fire first, but police are dispatched at the same time. They stage. It's kind of a reverse of roles from over the years. Police always went first, and then they called us in once they cleared the scene. So it's a reverse of roles. And fire goes in and determines, do we need police or not? The minute we realize we don't need police, we free them up for other responses. This program goes to what you were just speaking of, sir. We developed a behavioral health guide / worksheet that's on the iPad that all the paramedics carry. It runs them through all the questioning to evaluate the needs of the patient, and also has the ability to have a QR code that the patient can scan with their phone. It gets them hooked up to a clinician right away. It gives them the ability to reach out and call for mobile crisis, and we can stay on scene while mobile crisis responds. So just because it turns into a fire first doesn't mean that we won't even de-escalate it more and they won't get transported in an ambulance. So one key part about the Firefighter First program is when we designed the training, the steering committee came forward and said, you know, we can do this with role players and we can do like scenario-based training. But we decided to bring in people that had lived experience of interacting with police officers, firefighters, and clinicians that truly had behavioral health issues in the past. And we used those folks as crisis actors. It was earth-shattering training because they could come in and tell their story even before the training started. They could tell the police officer or the firefighter how they felt. And I think that really moved the needle on, once again, ensuring that the staff was very interested in doing it different because we'd been doing it wrong. This right here is kind of a really basic overview of how a behavioral health call is now handled in your 911 center. The dispatchers are trained to detect a behavioral health emergency. They have a protocol that they go through. And if they determine there's a danger to violence or lethal means, it's business as usual and police are dispatched. If there's a weapon in play, self-injuries already taken place, those type of things, police are dispatched. If they determine there's not an immediate danger due to suicide or a medical condition, they dispatch fire first and stage police. Once again, if they determine that there's not a need for a response, they're transferred to the crisis center where there is a closed loop communication that ensures that the customer and the patient gets the needed treatment. This is very condensed version, but this is it in a nutshell. And currently we're transferring 17% of our behavioral health calls to Firefighter First, which ultimately puts us in a position where police are engaged a much shorter period of time than being the lead on those calls.
So is this crisis center is 24/7 operational?
24/7, 365. But believe it or not, they established a direct dial line. When it rings in the crisis center, it says San Ramon Valley, and that moves to the top of the queue. So it's when you do something like this, it's the first of a kind. There can't be any missed calls, can't be any dropped calls. We have a very strong relationship with the Contra Costa Crisis Center. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Deputy Chief Aguirre.
Statistics, right? This is we're getting towards the end of the presentation because we start demonstrating the real value of the program that we put together. And Lance touched on these, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on them. The first one is one of the biggest ones for us. It's an 80% diversion rate. So every time we have a firefighter first response, 80% of the time that we have one of those responses, it does not end up in a transfer to psychiatric emergency services through an involuntary hold. 80% of the time that our crews respond, it does not go there, which is great. That's what we set out to do, right? That was part of our guiding principles. He talked about the 17% is the firefighter first responses. So again, our firefighters are going in, PD staging, it's allowing us to de-escalate that situation and determine the best course of action for them. 7% of those calls are going to 988 directly, which 7%, it may not sound like a extremely large number, but the reality of it is that 7% of the time that our police officers don't have to respond, our firefighters don't have to respond, and they're available for service calls because it went directly to the crisis centers and our crews out in the field didn't have to do anything with it. So that's pretty phenomenal to me as an operations
Those are
chief.
coming into dispatch, but you're sending it to 988.
We're transferring it directly to the Contra Costa Crisis Center, which is the county's
But it
988.
did come into our dispatch center.
It comes into our dispatch center and then directly transferred over
Okay.
once we triage it.
Okay.
And then the last part of it is this 20% total reduction on time on task. And again, from an operations chief's perspective, this is a huge one for me because these calls on average are about 2-hour calls. As we talked about, we know where county hospital is, and for us to transport a patient from here, even let's say out at Bollinger, to get all the way down there to get to county hospital, and then depending on the offload time at the hospital and the return trip back, that ambulance is out of service for an extended period of time due to calls like this. With this program, we're able to reduce that total time on task by 20%, which keeps our police, fire, and our paramedic resources available for more urgent needs, whether it is a fire, whether it's a cardiac event, whether it's a stroke, et cetera, or there's a more acute police action needs to take place. 20% of the time, those crews are in service quicker, which is a big thing for us. Challenges, right? There's always going to be challenges with the new program, and we're looking at this with both eyes open and really understanding what we have in front of us. Lance talked about a lot of it with his presentation and that data sharing and integration. We're still working through those. There's still some struggles in making sure that we're able to get all the data we need so we can follow up and ensure the patient is getting the full continuum of care that they need to get the treatments that they need. And then working with the county LIMSA and other county health agencies and trying to increase alternative destinations. You know, we have one psychiatric emergency service in the county of 1.1 million people. We need other options to transport these patients to, especially if this problem is going to continue to get worse. The next steps for us is continued collaboration with our partner agencies. We talked about it, but NAMI Contra Costa was great with Gigi Crowder and sending down our crisis actors and those folks with lived experience to help with our training. We're always looking for partners within the community to work with, as well as partners like the Crisis Center. Grant funding, always looking for grant funds. There's a lot of money available out there that helped to pay for this to start. There was Measure X funds. There's CareStar grant that we got money from, as well as a Badges grant that allowed us to fund large portions of this pilot program. And then one of the last things that we're working on is taking all the lessons that we learned through this program, leveraging those lessons and the time we put in developing a solution for our customers, our patients, and turning that inwards towards ourselves and trying to shore up our behavioral health programs internally for our personnel. And that's looking at, you know, workers' compensation as it relates to PTSD, our employee assistant programs, et cetera, to really understand what we can do to make sure our employees are well taken care of. And then these are some of the agencies that we've worked most collaboratively with throughout the course of this program. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to Chief Meyer to close and any questions you all may have.
I think it's appropriate that right now, after hearing about obviously the city's financial issues and problems that the city and the citizens know, both watching at home and here, that I'm really proud of my staff. They were able to put together all the funds through grant funding, and it went away. But basically, the amount of money that the city put out on this was zero. We were able to pay for all the overtime, all the training costs, everything was grant funded. So you have a program that was fully paid for, which we're really proud of. But at this point, we'll stop speaking. I know we threw a lot at you, but we'll take questions if you have any.
Yeah.
Anyway. Go ahead.
Do we have a program? Okay, so we've dealt with the patient. It's been a couple of hours or however long it takes. We've gotten the response back from the clinician at 988. Do we do any follow-up a week or a month later to see that they've gotten access to resources that might help this person so we aren't going back on repeat calls? Is there any follow-up to get them
And
additional resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll let you speak for the PD side. We'll speak for the fire side.
Sure. So I can reference it. This is something that we switched our approach to behavioral health crisis going back to when Chief Gordon was in the realm, and I was a lieutenant at the time, and he tasked me with working with county mental health and changing our approach to it, because historically in law enforcement, it had been the person is loaded into the ambulance to shut the door and then you walk away.
Right.
But we don't treat any other calls like that. We investigate crimes, we assign detectives. And so back then we changed our approach to where we do follow up. We don't necessarily do direct follow up with the person themselves, but all of our officers are tasked with getting as much information on family members and other people involved in the incident when we arrive, so that we can follow up with the family after the fact to ensure that care is being administered, that they have the resources. And we have books and binders and everything for all different resources throughout the county to be able to do that follow-up and ensure that care is being, that the proper care is available to the people who are involved in these calls.
in theory, if we do that properly and the people take advantage of it, the likelihood of repeat calls back to this patient would go down substantially, I would think.
That was one of the main reasons why we started it. It's got to be going back 8 or 9 years ago now.
And then as you already asked and got the answer to, data collection has been the biggest challenge that we've had. We take all that information in and we do our best to follow up. Specifically, we CQI everything and we try to get information to those families that are in need. I think the power of the program is sometimes people in a mental health crisis don't know what options they have. Right. So that education continues. As far as following up beyond that, would you like to speak?
Yeah,
to that?
oftentimes the only option they know about is 911. That's the solve it all button.
Right.
That's a great question, Vice Mayor Perkins. And this is something that we're still working on and we hope to carry to the next level. But through this process, working in conjunction with the Crisis Center, if we have someone within our community that's put on an involuntary hold, so the police have to come and they put them on an involuntary hold, our mobile crisis, say A3 comes and puts them on a hold. When they go into PES at Martinez, when they leave, they're given a packet of follow-up resources, and they also are given a QR code to scan, and then that links them with the Crisis Center. And the linkages where we struggle on these calls are it's just a cycle. It happens again and again. Also, when we respond as first responders and fires out there, we have a different QR code that all they have to do, you just got to get them to put their phone over it and scan it. It loads them into the system. And a lot of times when they're coming down from crisis and there's been a great de-escalation, they kind of lose interest in talking about it. But that gets them a text message saying, please call anytime. You can call the Crisis Center. But if they don't call in 24 hours, then the Crisis Center calls them and checks in. Now, I'm not going to stand before you and say this is highly successful because a lot of people that are going through these crises, sometimes they don't want help. They get to the other side of the crisis and then it's till next time. But we're working on mechanisms to strengthen this. And you are 100% right. It's the continuum of care that needs to happen. And as mobile crisis throughout the county gets stronger and our program blossoms, it will give folks more alternatives for just the continuum of care.
Are we seeing other agencies pick up on this? Or, I mean, you've been to these
No.
conventions and seminars and things.
No, we haven't. We actually, this is a controversial program. A lot of people, and I don't mean this to belittle anybody, but a lot of folks go, oh, we're doing that. You know, we're already doing this program. What are you talking about? San Ramon PD, we do this already. What they do is they take an ambulance in a county of, X amount of people, and they throw a paramedic with a clinician, and then they go to homeless encampments and they just travel around. This program is putting the 911 center, which is what we deal with, in a position to deal with it in that first 7 minutes, right? The first 7 minutes that we get a call, we get there. So, and deal with that crisis. And so that's where there's a difference. And compliment to our firefighters, I can tell you, multiple conversations when we do this presentation, our firefighters would never do that. Why would we do that? Well, because for a multitude of reasons, right? For the patient, number one. And if that's not good enough, well, you can get back to the station quicker because you're going to be gone for X amount of hours. Whatever you have to do to have a conversation, but it's a business model and it's about the patient. And I'll let Chief talk about the police department side. A lot of times they don't want to give up control. And I know it's hard to believe that cops can be like that. They're mellowing out lately, but
Never happens.
I don't know if you want to talk to yours, but
Almost made it.
yeah, I know. I can't help myself. Go ahead.
It is true. And there's a resistance within law enforcement, which I don't fully understand, but there is a resistance within our profession of giving up these calls for service. There's a misconception that if we do that, somebody's going to be hurt. And I'm not going to say that there's no risk involved in this. I've been on behavioral health crisis calls that can turn like that. But the reality is, if you take the peace officer out of the scenario, it's a lot less likely to turn on a dime. And we realize that. There's a reason why I'm not wearing a uniform tonight. I didn't wear a uniform tonight because that's part of our theory behind this. is if we can take the law enforcement uniform out of the scenario, we're going to be in better shape. And you can put just the highest level communicator that you have in a police department. But if he's wearing that uniform when he walks in the door, he's not just dealing with that incident. He's dealing with the entire history that that person has with law enforcement. Every negative connotation, every reaction that they have based on their lived experience with law enforcement is going to come into play. And if we can take that out of the scenario, then we have a greater likelihood to avoid physical confrontations, avoid use of force scenarios, and avoid just a pure escalation of the situation because there's a uniform and a law enforcement officer that walk through the door. So that's our theory behind it. That's the concept behind it. We haven't had any incidents that led us to do this because of something that happened. We just saw a better way to do it, combining with the fire department to make this happen.
Question for both of you. Are we tracking any costs associated with this? And are we finding it is saving money, or it's you're basically salary, and so people, unless you're paying overtime, your costs are what they are. But are we finding that this is costing us more? With the exception, I understand 12 hours of training is very expensive. I recognize that, but outside of the, excuse me, the training, is this costing us more or less, or it's just doing business?
I'll speak from the PD side of it, is that there's no increased cost on our side. And I think it depends on how you quantify savings. Do we have officers that are in service more? And that's yes. So having them available to respond to calls for service, they're more frequently available. Every time there's a firefighter first response, that officer could, in an emergency situation, leave and will be in service faster than they would be if they had to stay on scene, place someone under an involuntary hold, write the report, and everything that comes along with that. So it's not necessarily a cost savings because that officer is going to be working anyway.
That's kind of my point there.
Right.
You've got costs, but
it's cost neutral, but it's a
effective
time benefit because they're in service and available for other calls.
Okay.
And for us, as you saw, a 20% decrease in time on task, same concept, right? That we're available for other calls. So whenever that happens, it's more anecdotal, the ability to be available for the next call. I will say this, and it's a theory, it's crazy theory we have from fire's perspective, is when you deal with the job of police officer or firefighter. I don't want to speak for police, but I was a police officer, so I think I can't. I love doing that to them. But in all seriousness, when you deal with the fact that we had little to no training to deal with mental health crisis, and I would take everybody, imagine that you're a firefighter, imagine you go to a medical call, and you get there and somebody's child is in pain, God forbid, you lose a child, a grandparent, whoever. There's mental health crisis going on immediately with everybody in there. Anybody who's been through a major medical, think back to standing there when you watched your loved one suffer and you didn't know what was going to happen to them. And I think everybody in this audience can remember a time when they watched that, or if you God forbid, had the unfortunate experience to have that happen to a loved one. As a firefighter, you walk into that and now you have no training on how to deal with the mom, with the son, with the grandmother, when they don't know what's happening to their loved one. And we have to wing it. So in your answering this question, I just want for you to understand in our theory, if we teach our police officers and our firefighters how to deal with that section that never was taught in my career, you were winging it out there. Whether you put your arm around somebody, you give them a hug, maybe they, whatever happens, they do what they're going to do, and you try your best to comfort them. Now we're giving them tools to deal with those folks. And here's the savings that we think we can have when we talk about next steps. If I teach you how to deal with mental health crisis, which is the toughest part of our job, in my humble opinion, it's not the medical. We know how to do that. We're trained for hours, if not, years on how to deal with that. But if I know how to deal with the mental health aspect, then maybe my mental health will be reinforced. Maybe I'll be stronger in understanding how to deal with that, because the things that kept me up at night as a firefighter were the scream of the mother, not the issue, but the person that I didn't know how to deal with. Now we're teaching them how to deal with it, and we think that's going to pay off in less workers' compensation, less mental health challenges for our firefighters, a more resilient, stronger mentality and culture in the fire service and the police department. That's just, a crazy theory, but we're going to work through that and see if that makes a difference.
Yeah, can I follow up on the training piece of it? Now this training took place for your dispatchers and on how to triage calls, that sort of thing, for the firefighters, for the police and everything else. We've been doing this for a year. What's the sustainment training now to keep this going? And especially if you have new personnel, coming in, you've got people leaving, new people coming in, how do they get the training? How do you keep this up? How often is that sustainment training, even for your existing personnel?
Yeah, great question. We do annual training with it. I'll let Chief Aguirre speak to it, but annually we do refresher training, and everybody that comes in new, now we have that in our system. So when you come in, you're going through the 12-hour training when you're hired as a new firefighter paramedic with the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. That becomes part of the EMS Academy. So we do refresher training. I believe we're thinking about upping it to 16 hours if I'm not mistaken.
We're at 30 hours now
Oh.
for new recruits.
Yeah, yeah. So we're kind of inputting it. Is there a cost? Well, we can adjust some of the training we do, because anytime you have an academy and training, that we can adjust where we move some of the time frames that we work on. And then when it comes to refresher training, and I don't want to speak for the police department, I'll let them answer. We have EMS training every week. So what we do is we prioritize this as one of the ongoing recurring trainings that we have, along with everything else we do with STEMI, with heart attacks, with everything. And now it's built in the system. And it's just something that becomes second nature. But I'll let Chief speak.
Yeah, and from the police department's perspective, we've ramped up, we've increased our behavioral health training across the board. Every year we do a mental health training day that's specific to that. Our training days are now 12-hour training days. So we incorporate it all. Every May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So every May now it's transitioned to doing mental health awareness training. So we've incorporated that. Everyone who comes into our police department, as you know, we've only been hiring experienced police officers for the past 5 or 6 years now. Everyone who goes through our 2-week orientation with the police department gets the starting course on what the firefighter first response program is, what our behavioral health response methodology is in San Ramon. And they expand on that with a short bit of behavioral health response to go above and beyond what they've received in their career so far. And behavioral health response training in law enforcement has grown exponentially across the profession, at least in California specifically. It's become something that almost every police officer that you encounter now has been through an 8-hour course. All of our folks through the 12-hour joint training that we have here, 40-hour courses, all of these things have grown so much because the communities have realized the importance of this training for our officers. So we've grown as well. And we're working, I know Lance and Captain Chestnut are working on refresher training for joint training with the fire department and police officers, again, to get them in that room and to revamp everything and get everybody back on the same page. Not that they've strayed, but just having that training together, as you've heard before, is such a benefit for all of us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I also want to follow up on one of the slides talked about if it's like a suicide call or something like that, that's a firefighter response. Well, some suicide calls can become violent. I mean, when we first started talking about this program, I think we talked about it in terms of a nonviolent mental health emergency or something like that. But have we had any experience where you've gone out on a call with a potential suicide and then you determine that, okay, well, there might be a lethal means here, and so we got to call back the cops or something like that?
Well, I'll just say we're always there. We may just be right around the corner, or we may be a few houses down the street. And one of the massive advantages that we have is we're running through the same dispatch center. So a firefighter can be inside the house. We can be 2 houses away, and it's a call that goes to the dispatch center. It goes directly to our firefighters, to our officers that are right around the corner, and they can respond if there is an escalating threat of violence. And so we're right there. It is Like Lance said, it's a reverse where
Mhm.
firefighters there and police are staging on the outside.
Right.
But we're always there. We're always in close proximity.
And I understand your confusion, and I just confirmed it because I knew it, but I want to make sure. The one thing I would say is just remember, when we write suicide, those were general. If it's an active, if it's active, like suicide attempt, as opposed to speaking of it.
I
That's
see. Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
so if there's an active, I've got a knife against my throat, I'm going to, jump out of the window, that's when police are going to come first. If somebody's talking about suicide, right? They're talking about taking it, I just can't go on, then we'll go fire.
Right,
After
right.
we vet the call with no weapons, no violence, no criminal history at the residence. So we, and we didn't go into great detail, but understand our dispatchers, when I say ours, they're yours too, are the best in the business. So they are going to go through and make sure if there's any question, PD will go in first.
Yeah.
So I think when we write suicide up there, I think there's a little confusion. I noticed that too. It's more threats of suicide, and then you break down, what does that
Yeah.
mean?
Ideation
Yeah.
thing. So the earlier question I had for Lance, I just want to follow up on that. Let's say someone's on scene, firefighters on scene, they're responding. It's a mental health crisis, and are there times when the firefighters will not just maybe not call the county crisis center, but if there's a family member there or a loved one who, and this person who you're responding to has already had their patient, they have a doctor, they have a clinician or something like that, do you get them on the phone perhaps, or do you go straight to the county?
No, that is 100% our goal. You're speaking our language. Our goal is to de-escalate, learn as much as we can in a short period of time from the patient or their loved ones, and determine, oh, you have a clinician you usually talk to? Do we have that number? One thing we do not to overwhelm the patients, we send an engine and an ambulance and police is staged outside on a firefighter first. We usually send in the captain and one paramedic. Keep the house empty, keep it flowing. And when we learn information about, oh, you have a clinician, or your mother's just down the street and we can get her back here, we exhaust the lowest level of care first, or something that's normal for them, before bringing in a next level or a stranger. To back up just a second on your question about, the suicide and does it escalate and have we had to call in police? We have not had a situation thus far where Fire First has been in there and had to, pull the pin and say, get police in here. What we have had multiple times on scene, en route, and over the phone is law enforcement, men and women of your police department saying, I know this individual. I think we should switch this to a Fire First. It will go better. In the house, walk out and say, hey, you guys come on in. I'm going to go outside. It's going to go better with you. So we've had it really go the other way, which I will tell you, I personally didn't think it would mature that fast.
Yeah, that's great.
But I just listened to a call recently where I had a patrol officer saying to dispatch, aware of the situation there, that switch this to a Fire First. And that's the men and women of your police department knowing your community, which is, second to none.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question, Sridhar, unless you have one, go ahead.
Yeah.
Mine's a little different subject.
Thanks for a great presentation. When the first thing is, whenever this whole information that is shared within the community, a lot of people lack that gap. So is there a plan that we can share this information within the community about this program thoroughly, so that people understand that we have something like this fantastic program?
Yeah, I think we've done a good job of getting out to community groups and really pushing the message. I think, and it's a great point, and I just would take a step back. The one thing with this program, you have to remember, it's a 911 call. So it's hard to, because if we tell them, hey, this program exists, but don't call 911 and let you, right? So it's this balancing act, trying to get them to the mobile crisis response team at the county versus 911. So our goal is to get this information out, and I think we've done a good job, but I also think that when people are in crisis and they call 911, they're not even thinking about, oh, well, I'll call 911, right? They're calling for a different way. So it's kind of an interesting way to get the information out. I think for us, one of the things that wasn't said, and I think we need to emphasize is you know, we don't want to be in this business, just like I believe the police department really doesn't want to necessarily be in this business. But if we take the 911 calls and we can find different alternatives, like the MCRT team at the county, which we hope gets up and running and is as robust as possible, we will bring them in. And so it's kind of this balancing act, right? Hey, we have this program, but you still have to call 911 to get it. Well, if, you know, if they're stable enough, then they're going to call the MCRT team or the crisis line itself. So this is for us, kind of a diversion program. if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I understand
Yeah.
that from your side, but
Yeah.
from our side, it is like the community is always question us that, hey, what city is doing
Yeah.
for these kind of
Yeah.
issues, right? So there's always these questions keep coming up for us.
Yeah, and we've done great.
Yeah.
I've talked at multiple Government 101 and Rotary, and we're out in the community speaking to this program on a regular basis. And we'll continue to figure out ways to let people know that we're doing something different. We have done it and we'll continue to do it for sure.
That includes speaking out into the schools and everything too.
Yeah, actually, that was one of our partners. We wanted to sit down with the school district and I have to be careful because I don't want to, you know, sometimes my compliments to you can seem passive aggressive to our neighbors, but we spoke to the school district about this. We brought in the chief. We sat down to educate the parents, the school board. We've spoken to the school board multiple times to tell them about this program, both at an open session and with the superintendent. And it was interesting because we're sitting in these meetings and we have other police chiefs within the school district. And you have to remember, this is a city, and I think I need to emphasize this if we haven't emphasized this enough. This is a City of San Ramon program. It's not a Town of Danville program. They don't do it. Even though we respond there, it's not Alamo, it's not Blackhawk, it's not Morgan Terry. It is only here. So one of the challenges that we had was we're not fighting with our partners. We love our partners, but you're having a conversation with school board folks and school officials saying, when you're in the city of San Ramon, this is how we respond. And then you've got the town of Danville and the sheriff going, we're not doing that. So you can see it's kind of a tough situation. And I don't know if your opinion, I mean, you were there. I think it's one of those things that we're trying to be as nice as we can. We have a school district that covers all over the place, and we have to educate them as to how the program works within our area. So, any comment on that? Are you guys good?
I think it's meaningful.
Okay, all right.
Last year at the beginning of the school year, myself and Deputy Chief Aguiar were invited to the onboarding for the school district for clinician and some lead counselors. What would you say, Chief? 100 people probably there. And so we did a complete overview of the program. We also discussed, 988 and its rollout. And so, although this is specific to the city, the school district is up to speed on it. And from time to time, the school will call because they want to get a firefighter paramedic to come in and try some de-escalation techniques. Now, one thing I will tell you is, back to your point, we show up on the school and we want the emergency contact. We want to contact mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. We want to go through that process. And that's something that's somewhat new to the school districts. And so it really slows down the process in a good way. And a lot of the times we get parents on scene, we have to have any alternative means of interaction, which has been very successful. One point that I was remiss in my presentation, and I'm sorry I didn't cover this, a key change to this program, you talk about the advertisement and how it gets out. When you dial 911 to your PSAP now, the dispatcher is going to ask you police, fire, EMS, or behavioral health emergency. And once again, we review 100% of these calls. People are like, oh, I didn't know you offered that. And they say, oh, I have a behavioral health issue. It changes the entire tempo and outcome of the call. And that would be an example of things that we've talked about with other dispatch centers. And they're like, oh, no, we never could ask that extra question. It's not a complicated process.
And we did speak in front of the PTA, and I mean, and it's tough. You have these presentations, and again, I'm giving credit to the city council and the police department for doing this program. It's really hard when you have a bunch of people walk up to you and go, well, I live in Danville and I live, wherever. And are you doing it there? And we go, no, we're not doing it there. Go talk to your town council. No offense.
No, I like it.
Yeah, you like it. Yeah. So anyway, so we're out there doing as much education as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean that only you have to do that, even from our side as a
Yeah.
council,
Yes,
as a,
yes,
we need to also do that
Yes.
one. So definitely we'll work on that one.
absolutely.
My next question is, I'm glad to see that you are already working in partnerships with other organizations like Crisis, Contra Costa County Crisis Center. Are you open for any nonprofit organizations or community that they can be partner with you? Or if yes, is there a way they can be, like, for example, Discovery Counseling or any other organizations?
Yeah, I'll let you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the partnerships would come in the resources that are available. I don't know that the program, and I want to speak for the fire department on this, they can reference it, but the program is really geared with first responders going in. Because that's how we're going to get people there as quickly as possible to be able to provide the service to the community member. So the incorporation would be through the resources that these other organizations can provide. And Discovery Counseling Center, I've sat down and talked with them multiple times about what we're doing here. They're fully involved to have the resources. They're an incredible resource specifically for the kids in our community. Without a doubt, but it's what resources could be offered to the patient at the time that the call for service is there. And any organization that is able to provide a service could be a reference point to be able to provide the materials to the person in crisis, there with the individual suffering from a crisis, to be able to give them the best care. And they talk about that continuum of care. It's through multiple different resources to be able to get them what they need.
Okay, sounds good. My
Yeah.
third question, sorry. My third question is about, I see based on the stats, it's already, the program is running really like the way we expected, right? So do we have any plan to expand such a way that we can do a specific solutions? For example, I don't know, right now, do we have any specialization for behavioral health person who is going to attend this one, like let's say for youth or veterans? There could be different reasons, right? So do we have any such specialization right now, or if we have any plan to do that one in future?
Yeah, I think the key is we're just coming upon a year.
Mhm.
So I think as we look at the next steps, we're going to evaluate, as we said, continuous quality improvement, and then evaluate what kind of calls we're getting. And then if there's a certain thing we see in our community that needs more attention, then we will adjust based on what we're seeing. But I will tell you already at the beginning of this program, what I thought would happen, and I think we've done it, and you probably know the stats on it. We really felt like this was going to be an under 18. Your juvenile response is what you're seeing with what we're doing. That's kind of that's our most, the biggest customer that we've had in this situation so far. But we won't ever shy away from a clinician on staff, the ability to follow up. So we're keeping our options open to see what we will do in the future. But what we've seen in those other programs with clinicians on ambulances, we want to make sure that we tailor it to what our community's issues are. And I don't think we're there yet to really evaluate what that looks like. But we're keeping our options completely open. And especially when we deal with, as I said earlier, grant funding and all these programs where they want to give us money to deal with these issues, something like you're speaking to is not outside the realm of the next couple of years.
That will be awesome. And also, this is more like a comment, because you're already doing like 4 data point collection, right? So as you mentioned, there's a lot of new technologies coming up, especially in AI space. So that we should be also see some exploration on that side to see if we can include some of those.
Good point. Absolutely.
I'd like to ask one that has a little bit more to do with training and file it under, I wonder how we would handle it if it happened today. You get a call and they identify themselves as the FBI. They're calling you because one of your residents has been in contact with her husband who's on a flight that's been hijacked. I mean, do we just send a policeman out there as we did before, or is this something to do with the mental health crisis?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I know exactly what
I'm the
you're
mayor.
referring to. Yeah, you're the mayor. We haven't thought of that, but it would get vetted appropriately, right? We would go through what we call, I guess it's card 25. We would ask what they need, you know, back to the point. And if they went down the line for a warm handoff to the crisis center so they could talk to somebody about what they're feeling, or they needed to see somebody because they were just having a crisis that they couldn't handle, we would go fire first. Or if God forbid, they, you know, we're going to get ready to hurt themselves because they don't know what's going to happen, then we'd adjust appropriately. But that's the beauty of this, the way we do things. I think Lance made a great point. We now add, is this a behavioral health incident? And it creates more of a acceptance that, okay, you can tell us what you're feeling so that we can properly vet it. And we'll get down to, you know, what the needs of our patients and our customers are, our residents. So, yeah.
Now there's the point that she's talking to somebody on the plane too.
Mm.
So it's, I mean, it's not something you can just let go.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point, Kay.
I think, probably some of your calls or maybe most of your calls are, something happens in somebody's life and there's an episode going on, but there's probably some patients that you encounter who are on medication and they're maybe off the medication, or something's not right with the medication. How do you, are your folks trained in kind of asking all those questions about, are you on your meds, or what meds are you on, or things like that?
Yeah, the iPad basically gives us exactly what we need. I'm only looking at our mental health specialist over there who's put together all these questions. But yeah, we get down to what's the root cause. Is it a, as was said earlier, somebody breaks up with somebody?
Yeah.
It's a juvenile, or somebody, as Chief Aguiar said, their medications aren't right because they've been recently diagnosed as whatever, manic, bipolar, whatever it might be. When people get on medications, that's, the beauty of having a paramedic there is those are the questions we ask anyway.
Yeah.
We kind of tried to we tried to solve the problem with the people that ask those questions when you go, hey, my chest hurts. We ask all those questions, gather all the information, and based on their training, they're able to decipher, oh, okay, this is a medication issue. But what we typically find, and I don't want to speak too much on this, I'll let the expert, when there's no meds and erratic behavior begins, sometimes those end up being not a firefighter first call because the behavior can be a little too erratic. It just depends. So.
Well, I just want to say thank you for this program, for your partnership with the San Ramon Police Department, for supporting our residents. And I think this is a great program. Sounds like it's been very successful. Sounds like it's a super approach to caring for patients. And it's, the bottom line is it appears to be improving the patient outcome. And I think that's great. Yes, it frees up resources and all that, but if it's improving the patient outcome, I think that's it's a winner. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
We have the cards.
you do
public
have public comment.
And I'd just like to thank the council on behalf of the fire board. The council and the fire board had to say, go forward. I mean, it's easy for us to get up here and give you crazy ideas. You guys have to click the button and say, move forward. So thank you. And
So
I would
where's
say-
the next conference?
Well, we're done with that. Vegas one was plenty. But I do want to say that the blue brings out your eyes. So you're looking good today. So thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so public comment cards, first card, please.
Great
Public
card.
comment. Greg?
Greg Carr, San Ramon resident. I was planning to sit in front of the TV, have a beer, and something in the back of my head said, get off your dead butt and get down to the city council. I now know what that was about. The presentation I just heard, I'm not going to, spend a lot of time kissing up to you guys, but the presentation I heard, excellent. Informational. Of course, you expect the fire chief and police chief to be good speakers, and they are. But the two guys from the fire, excellent. And I'm attuned to that stuff because I'm always staring at the TV, looking at how crappy a speaker I am. But these guys did a great job. more importantly, from doing a good job, informational. So through you to the people on the screen, which is something I like to do, especially when I stand here and I see a guy I know, these two gals I don't. I know him, and of course I know her and staff. But look at the non-attendance. So to all of you who see this on YouTube, you need to get off your butts and get down here. And two things, see how your elected representatives are performing and come and hear what these people, or the professionals, cops, fire, EMS, and learn something informational. And I swear I'm still learning. And I'm an old guy, but I'm still learning, and I'm glad I came. So the three takeaways I have are, first, to put them both in the same structure. That should have happened 100 years ago. Excellent. Okay. Second one is to have them cooperating on first response. Excellent. Choose the right first responder. And of course, the third one from the police chief just about floored me, because I'm a guy who was at Berkeley in the 60s. And I remember a lot of police that even and I'm not a fruitcake kind of guy, even I was a little appalled by it. But I heard this man say, sometimes it's better to put on your civilian clothes, private clothes, and come down and deal with the person that's having a problem, because they might have an anti-cop bias. So congratulations to you, because you're 100% correct. I'd like to see him in a suit all the time, but of course that's his choice. But those are the takeaways and the things you can learn coming down here. But we got a big place for all of you to come. Very important. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Greg. Next speaker, please.
That was the only speaker card for the.
Okay, we'll close the public comment discussion. Any more? I think he summed it all right. Thank you, guys, for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
And whatever we can do to keep it going. See, it always worries when we come up with a good program, we get a grant. Next thing you know, the grants run out and you don't have the money.
I'm grateful that
Retail task force.
incurring substantial costs associated with this program. We can do it within our current resources. And to me, that's very important.
But I would like to hear what comes up with if we have another 911s or 911. Okay, next item, please.
Item 10, city manager and city council members' comments and matters initiated.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. The only item I have for an update this evening is another Bollinger Canyon Road full closure coming up next week. So that will be Tuesday, October 1st. I can't believe it's October already. What happened to September? But next Tuesday is October 1st through the 7th, which is Monday, October 7th. Detours will be in place to direct traffic around the construction zone. It will be the exact same detour setup as the previous construction closure a few weeks back. So City Hall will still be open, Marketplace, Shopping Center, those entrances will be open, but people will be diverted from the construction site. This closure will enable, and it will be the last complete road closure associated with the bridge. It will enable a critical phase of the construction where precast concrete deck panels will be set in place. So if you drove under the bridge on your way in today, you would have noticed 8 cables have been installed. They're in the process of tensioning the cables, and once that's complete, they will be able to put the concrete decking on there for the load bearing with the cables. More information, including a detour map, are available at sanramon.ca.gov. Once again, we appreciate everyone's patience with the closure. The last closure, we received very few direct complaints. So we were very happy that the closure seemed to work to the best extent possible. And with that, I have no other updates for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Go to Mark and then Sridhar.
Sure. Been doing a few activities out in the community in the last couple of weeks. One was on 9/11. I went to the annual 9/11 Remembrance ceremony at Oak Hill Park. Mayor and I were there. This is put on by the Exchange Club every year. Very moving event. A great speaker, a Marine Lance Corporal, talked about some of his experiences, and a lot of community leaders spoke about 9/11 and their experiences as well. I'm also on a planning committee for the 100th anniversary of the Veterans Building of the San Ramon Valley. And so it's the San Ramon Valley. It's even though it's in Danville, it is for residents of San Ramon, Danville, Alamo. But it's the 100th anniversary coming up next year. There's going to be a big event on March 30th of 2025. I'm kind of representing San Ramon, but it will probably be just communicating about the event and putting it out on social media, things like that. There'll be a big deal on the 30th of March, more to follow on that. On the 12th of September, I attended a ribbon cutting ceremony for Paca Local. It's a new restaurant over by Croquet and San Ramon Valley Boulevard, kind of a South Asian cuisine. Had a nice event there. And then on the 13th, last Friday, I attended a Camp Parks Community Relations meeting. They have a new commander out of Camp Parks, Lieutenant Colonel Richard King. San Ramon has not been present for quite some time at different Camp Parks events. They're one of our neighbors, so I'm trying to reinvigorate that relationship, and spoke a little bit about some upcoming events. Last Monday, we had the Open Space Advisory Committee meeting. There was 4 items there. One, Ron Marley from the Fire District talked about open space fire prevention. Our own Lauren Barr from the Planning Department talked about the planning year in review. Keith Haas from Parks talked about, gave an update on the Outer Spatial app, which is the app that has been used in the past for hiking and trails and things like that. There's plenty of hikers out on the trails, if nothing else, an increase in hikers, but the use of that app has gone down. So as a cost savings measure, we're going to quit paying for that, maybe save about $5,000 to $7,000 a year on that app. And then Brad Morris from Parks also talked about a couple new clubs over at Cal High. They've got a hiking club and a mural club, but they're just getting off the ground, and more to follow on those. Then on the 18th, I attended the annual employee recognition event. So good job by Megan O'Donoghue there, and I guess the committee that put all that together. They handed out some service awards, had a little family feud action going on, and some good food from Los Panchos. But a great job by the employee events committee in putting that together. Great to see everybody. And then on last Thursday, I went to the Live Well Resource Fair over at the Senior Center. A lot of health and wellness professionals there, caregivers, care facility representatives, and they did some health screening, and just a lot of good compliments from people who don't usually hang out at the Senior Center, saying, wow, what a great Senior Center. It's so welcoming. It's so inviting. You got a great thing going on here. So that was good to hear that feedback. Then last week, I also attended the Chamber of Commerce Business and Tech Expo and the Mixer over at the Bridges Golf Course. A lot of our local businesses there, food and beverage vendors, some good networking going on amongst our small businesses. And then last Saturday, I attended the Enzo and Me Pediatric Cancer Foundation. It was a fundraiser over at the Casabella Event Center. And Greg and Joyce Carr, of course, were there. They spoke at one of our last meetings. Krista and Danny Krista, Greg's daughter, spoke and talked about Enzo, and the whole city council was out there. And it was great to attend that event. Very well done, and really an enjoyable evening. And I hope it raised some good funds for, cancer awareness and research. And then finally, yesterday, I spoke to a young group of Brownies. They are working on their Democracy for Brownies badge. This is a badge that they learn about local government. They learn about state government, federal government, the different branches of government, and they had a bunch of good, challenging questions. So they put me on the spot, and it was just a lot of fun to speak with the Brownies from Troop 31633. These are all second graders, so that was just a lot of fun. And that's my report.
Thank you. Sridhar?
Okay. Thanks, Mayor Hudson. On September 14th, I had privilege to kick off our US West Cricket Youth 15, under 15. This is Western Conference. The teams came from Dallas, Houston, Seattle, and some of the parts of the western side. And US Cricket hosted this event along with the San Ramon Cricket Association. And there are two teams that represented Bay Area, and the Bay Area teams were at least 4 or 5 kids are from San Ramon Cricket Association. So, and San Ramon Cricket Bay Area won the championship. And thanks to our San Ramon Parks and Community Services Department, as well as city manager, to make sure that the parks are, or the sports fields are prepared ready, so that they could able to enjoy the best of the cricket fields. And also thanks to our Discover San Ramon for helping with the hotel rooms for the visitors who visited to play the games. So it was overall a very good events. I would say that one of the first kind of our sports tourism initiation. So that's one. Then again, afternoon, I attended our community neighborhood watch program with Lieutenant Pelayo. So we had a conversation with our neighbors, neighborhood watch groups about the flock system that they are planning to install and how they are going to monitor, how they can build a partnership with our city. So this is going to be the first kind of partnership that we are going to implement between private in the sense that in this case it is HOA with our PD department. So the new policies and guidelines, those are going to be built around it, and that is going to be our future implementations that may implement across other neighborhoods within the community. So I'm looking forward for that. So thanks to our San Ramon Police Department to be there and answer all those questions. And then the third one, on September 14th, again, I attended a blind cricket in San Ramon. One of our local organization, nonprofit organization, they hosted Seva, they hosted a blind cricket. People with the blindness, they played cricket and they did a fundraising charity on that one. And then on September 12th, as along with Council Member Armstrong, attended Akka Local. This is our small business that just opened restaurant in our San Ramon. So it was nice to attend that. And then on last weekend, again with all of the council members, I had attended Enzo and Me. Thanks to Krista, thanks to Danny, and thanks to Greg Carr, Joyce for hosting such an important event so that you can bring awareness for pediatric cancer and also help in fundraising so that we can help the children who are in need most. So those are the events I attended. Thank you.
Let's see, had a LAFCO meeting. It's a local agency formation commission. Excuse me. We had a withdrawal of the dissolution of the Alamo Lafayette Cemetery District. They had proposed to dissolve the district, but they withdrew their recommendation. East Bay Regional Communication System Authority meeting. We have a new secretary that some of you might know, Jocelyn Kwong is the new secretary for the eBricks. Let's see, we passed a new accounts receivable policy where if you're more than 60 days late paying, you'll get a 10% fee added to your bill. And if you're more than 6 months, it will be sent to collections and you'll end up paying your bill plus the 10% plus the cost of the collection. So the new executive director kind of was digging around in the old closet and found that we had about $2 million of at least of accounts receivable, and he's been whittling that down very effectively. We did write off $268,000 that was mainly due to ambulance companies going out of business with unpaid bills. So that was taken care of. Traffic's meeting on 9/16. Traffic's is the congestion relief program that looks like school buses. Our pass sales are higher than last year, even though we had a 30% increase in the ticket sales. Monte Vista still has waiting lists on every single one of their bus lines. We did implement a new route. There's a route that goes from Golden View out on Crow Canyon to Cal High, and there's a current stop right at Iron Horse Middle School. So since that bus isn't full, I asked if they could possibly bring students, middle school students, down through there, and they can 4 days a week. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, they will be bringing students down. The bell times don't work out in the afternoon, but at least they can ride down the hill at a reduced rate. So that'll get another 10 or so cars off the road, and the traffic gets 10 more riders. CCTA, Contra Costa Transportation Authority, we got $80,000 for traffics. They're going to be working on a bond refinance that should save us about $6 million. And they're working on the integrated transit plan, and they have now started if you've seen the little bus that goes around Bishop Ranch, there's one like that out at Rossmore, and it's getting a huge response at Rossmore, and they've been asked to double the number of units out there at Rossmore. And now they're doing another program out at Martinez that will serve the county hospital. MCE board meeting, we had, they have negotiated a renewal of their lease in the Concord office at a 39% reduction in cost. Some of that is due to shrinking the footprint. Some of it is due to the competition in Class A office space. And then we had a discussion on Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant. The life of that has been extended for 5 years by the California State Legislature, the CPUC, and a couple other agencies. We get, through the CPUC directives, we get some of that power in MCE. The question was, were we going to accept that power? We were going to pay for it anyway, whether we accepted it or not. But if we accept the power as it's presented, it goes on what is called our power content label. And it'll show us at about 6% of our power content will now be nuclear powered, but it saves us $100 million over 6 years. So we're about $16 million a year of savings. Because if we didn't accept it, we'd have to go buy power to replace that. So it passed 30-2. So you were at the technical committee meeting that discussed it. This was the full board.
No.
And the discussion went on for about an hour. So that was all. And I want to thank again Mr. Carr and his extended family and wonderful foundation gala out in Sunol. Thank you very much. That was a very worthwhile evening, very worthwhile cause, and I hope they raised a small pile of money. Seemed like it. It was a worthwhile evening, so. David?
Yeah, I also want to thank the planning commission for showing up. You don't see that much where you have the whole city council and the planning commission.
Commission was there, yes.
But first I'll handle a little bit of business here. I was not at the employer recognition because I was at the mayor's only luncheon in Pleasanton. And I want to let our mayor candidates know that in February, we are expected to hold the luncheon here. So start looking for a place to handle it. I'll also reiterate what we said, or we've heard most of the night. The most important thing was the Enzo and me gala out at Sunol. And I can't say enough about the speakers that were there, included our Marisol Rubio and her daughter, who gave a great presentation. And they had to follow somebody that you did not, it'd be like trying to follow John Wooden at UCLA. Sorry, Greg. There are certain acts you don't want to follow. They're that good. And in particular, the Zoom call we got from a doctor who's back in Washington, DC, trying to raise money for research for a certain kind of brain cancer that has what's the best way to put this? A zero chance of survival. And she's back there just trying to do it. And thank you, Enzo and me, because they're contributing to this research. Just let that doctor know that you're definitely welcome in San Ramon, and we'll find a place for research. I think we have to make sure our chief of police and fire get there next year. They can bid on all these memorabilia because the money goes to a great cause, and everybody enjoyed it. Very special place, just extremely well done. Kristen and Danny did a great job, but Greg setting that place up was just a sheer genius. Anyway, that's it for me and my report. What's next?
Item 11, adjournment.
Okay, there we go.
Boy, that's a tough one.